I spent my whole damn life in the city. I could go for broke, but the capital is in me. I spent my whole damn life in the city. Anywhere I go, DC's coming with me. I spent my whole damn life in the city. I could go for broke, but the capital is in me. I spent my whole damn life in the city. Anywhere I go, DC's coming with me. I spent my whole damn life in the city. I could go for broke, but the capital is in me.
Welcome, everyone, to District Divided, a DC sports podcast, more specifically today, a Washington Wizards podcast. I am Amit, and that is not K-Dot with me. That is Max Ewert, who actually, fun fact for all of you, was the very first co-host of District Divided when it was audio only. Max, how you doing, man?
I'm doing good, Amit. Glad to be back. I feel like I helped, get the ball rolling.
That you did?
Took a big old step back, and I'm happy to be back.
Cool. Oh, hey, you're taking a big step forward today because you are the Wizards expert. So Max, for those that don't know, diehard Wizards fan. And we have a Slack channel with some other friends, and we've been talking nonstop about all these moves, absolutely all of them. So what we're going to do is we're going to recap the week that was for the Washington Wizards. So Bradley Beal moves, Kristaps Porzingis moves, third player that gets involved in the Bradley Beal trade gets moved. So we're going to talk about that. Then we're going to talk about the Wizards draft picks tonight. As of right now, it's still going on. So we're missing pick 57 from this recap. And then we're going to think about the state of the Wizards moving forward. And Max has an annual, definitely won't suck in the NBA list of draftees that we're going to get to at the very end. We're going to leave the comment mailbag in after the pod for when K-Dot gets back.
Awesome.
Max, let's just jump into it. So Bradley Beal, this was the big move that sort of blew up the Wizards universe, if you will. Mm-hmm. We get Michael Winger, president of the team, as well as Will Dawkins, general manager, greenlighting this move. Ted Leonsis, owner, greenlighting this move. Bradley Beal goes to the Phoenix Suns. In return, we get Chris Paul, legend of the game. We get guard Landry Shamet. We get 6 second-round picks, as it turns out. And we get 4 first-round pick swaps, 2024, 2026, 2028, 2030. That's one of the trades. Then Kristaps Porzingis goes to Boston with minutes before he can opt in or opt out, decides to opt in, gets shipped to Boston. We receive, in a 3-way trade with Memphis involved, Tyus Jones from Memphis, Danilo Gallinari, Mike Muscala, and the 35th pick that happened tonight in the draft. And then, of course, we have Chris Paul getting flipped to the Golden State Warriors, where we receive Jordan Poole, a 2030 top 20 protected first-round pick and a 2027 second-round pick. So 7 second-round picks in total, 4 pick swaps in the first, 1 top 20 protected first-round pick in 2030. Gallinari, Tyus Jones, Mike Muscala. My question to you, Max, is of those trades, which one was your favorite in terms of what we got back?
In terms of what we got back, my favorite trade was the Bradley Beal trade. And until all of the draft capital was revealed, which is sometime this afternoon, I was not a huge fan of the trade. I understood it. Like, we were backed into a corner, and we had kind of 2 ways to get out of it. And one way was keep the ball rolling and see what we can run it back. And the other way was dump everything we can and start from scratch. And because of that no trade clause, when you're dumping someone who's even as good as Bradley Beal, we didn't get as much back as I think a lot of people wanted, but the only option was Phoenix. Phoenix knew that they had leverage because of that, and so we moved them without getting any first round picks. However, all of those pick swaps, especially 28 and 2030, could be massive. It's not like Kevin Durant is known for staying on teams long. They tend to be about 3 seasons and then deuces, figure it out somewhere else. And he's older and he's injured a lot, so there's a significant chance that even the earlier pick swaps, like 26, could get us something really good back. Maybe even early lottery.
And just to your point, how quickly stars move around. I know there's a new CBA, second apron. We won't talk about that stuff too much tonight anyway,
I
if
think
at
it's
all.
relevant though.
It is relevant. It's certainly relevant to what the moves have been, but you see stars moving pretty constantly. So these pick swaps are actually a heck of a lot more valuable on the surface than people may expect, just because of how quickly things can change in the NBA landscape. You think about Kawhi and Paul George teaming up in LA, for example. Then Luka, Kyrie has been all over the place. You think about it. LeBron even has, Cleveland, Miami, Cleveland, LA. I mean, people move pretty consistently. And then KD himself, who you just mentioned. So those pick swaps could end up being quite valuable, although we may suck for some time. But
we will suck for some time, but honestly, it might be worth it.
Fair enough. Fair enough. So, okay, so those were the trades. Let's talk about the draft, though, because we did make a couple picks, and there was actually one more trade within the draft that we'll get to in a moment. So pick 8 is what we had. With pick 7, the Indiana Pacers selected Bilal Coulibaly. That ends up being our player. We end up trading up one spot, and it sounds like, according to Brian Windhorst, ESPN, that other teams were also calling the Indiana Pacers to try and move into that spot. So what do? Well, we just picked up 7 second-round picks. We give them 2 of them. We're not going to obviously use all of them, so we end up using 2 of them to move up, secure that spot, and take Bilal Coulibaly, who, as of right now, is most famous for being Victor Wembanyama's teammate. What we also learned during the draft, and for those that, like me, did not know, he grew a foot in the last couple of years, which is quite interesting. And then in the second round with pick 42, now, mind you, we did have pick 35, but we end up trading that to the Chicago Bulls for an additional couple second-round picks in the future. So we don't actually use that pick. Pick 42, Tristan Vukcevic, who is also a Serbian 7-foot second-round pick. Who knows what that
Thematic?
means? Yeah.
Jokic is 41, Vukcevic 42.
We tried to make it work.
It might be a trend there.
Might be. But why don't you go ahead, Max, because you were highlighting this before the show on the channel, the Slack channel. Bilal Coulibaly, he was one of the guys you really wanted for the Wizards. It was Anthony Black, and then Bilal. Talk to us about him.
Yeah. So my 2 players that I was interested in were Anthony Black and Bilal Coulibaly for different reasons. Anthony Black, I think, is going to be an immediate impact in the NBA. You could tell watching him play, he understands the game at a very high level. And I was interested in Nick Smith in the beginning of the year. And then obviously he missed the first half of the season with his issues. And so I still watched a couple Arkansas games, and immediate Anthony Black stood out as a really, really good player. However, Coulibaly, I think, is younger, didn't play basketball until he was older in age, which is I feel like a theme now with a lot of players.
Certainly.
And I watched his early G League Ignite versus Mets 92 games, where essentially it was the Scoot versus Wemby kind of
pretty cool
showcase, which was it was a lot of fun, and he looked really good. He really solid defender. We're going to talk about this with Leonard Miller as well, but I like to see players who are really good be the second best player on their team, because it shows that they understand how to fit into a role. And with a lot of the players that aren't stars that you're drafting, showing that they are willing to kind of do other things at such a young age, it's like an ego check a little bit. That's what they're going to have to do in the NBA when they first start. And for some players, that's really hard when they were the top dog for such a long time. And so he's gonna have time to. The other thing is that he's a bit raw, and so we're not trying to win over the next couple of years. He's going to get the opportunities to showcase his skills, which is a really, really good defender with some offensive upside, and have kind of carte blanche to make mistakes and learn on the go, because who gives a shit if we lose games?
Fair enough.
our timeline is not in the next 2 or 3 years. It's 5, 6, 7 years potentially. And that's
Absolutely.
when he could hit his peak. And it's really exciting to get someone who um maybe a little seen as a little bit risky of a pick,
Mhm.
but the upside is so high that I think it's worth the risk.
So, yeah, unless you wanted to talk about Tristan Vukcevic at all, we can just skip over to the state of the Wizards because it seems like we're already
I
trending in
could
that
talk a little bit
direction.
about Vukcevic.
Sure, go
Yeah.
ahead, and
So
then let's
so I
talk
didn't
about the
I
state of the
didn't know much
Wizards.
about him until the combine, and
Okay.
he went off in the combine. I watched one of the games, like the highlights for one of the games, and he was all over the place. And I checked out his stats, and he scored 21 points in 17 minutes against like the big dogs weren't playing, but the mid-tier guys were, and he was incredibly efficient. I saw in an interview that he doesn't want to be a stash guy.
Hmm.
He wants to come over, and he's
Just
looking
seeing
for a
that on
team to
Twitter
buy
as
him out.
well. He wants to come immediately. Yeah.
Yeah, and so and that means because of international players, the way their contracts work, he can't be a two-way guy. So this is a guy that they feel. I think he dropped a little bit because if someone drafted him, he would have to be a roster spot. And some teams don't have the luxury of just having some guy who may not be a contributor to be a roster spot.
Hmm.
But we do.
We
So fuck it.
certainly do.
Why not go for it? Especially with someone who looked as good as he did against his peers who are getting drafted tonight as well.
Yeah, we won't be dipping into the luxury tax at all, but we do have many, many luxuries on this roster in terms of being
Yes.
able to make mistakes, in terms of being able to let these kids grow together. And on that note, talking about the state of the Wizards, it puts Wes Unseld Jr. in quite a unique situation
Mhm.
where he takes his job with the promise of a Bradley Beal,
Mhm.
right, that he can build around. It's with a different GM in Tommy Shepard. Here we are, and he's now presented with a pretty cool in terms of it's always hard to tell. I was
Mhm.
talking to a friend about this earlier, Mikey Drohan, who you know, and it seems like this is a great opportunity for a coach to be able to leave his mark on a team. There is no
Yeah.
giant ego that is ahead of him.
Mhm.
Not saying Brad's an egotistical guy, but just you see the
He
contract
was
and
established though.
there you go. He was established. He has a super max. He has a no trade clause. Like you need to make that work.
Mhm.
I don't think there's really anyone on this roster where Wes needs to bend the knee, so to speak. It's his team. And that includes Jordan Poole, who's just getting here now. I know he's got that
Mhm.
bigger contract, but it's a unique situation. So looking forward, Max, at the state of the Wizards, what level of excitement do you have? What do you expect from this coming season? We still have free agency to go, and this 57th pick to go. Who knows what this is?
Mhm.
What do you expect?
I expect um some pain in the beginning, but like you said, it's an opportunity for Wes to kind of shape this team in the way that he wants to shape it. And I think that's really important for a young coach. This is only his going to be going into his third season. Um, and there are questions about him, about whether or not he's cut out for this. And I've I've heard too many good things from his time on the Nuggets to think that he's not going to be good at this. But it's hard when you're thrown into a situation where your expectations are don't align with the product that you're able to put on the court. The team wasn't good. He wasn't going to succeed with that, and there's only so much that you can do when that's the case. And so I'm excited to see how much leeway they give him. Like
Mhm.
if players are allowed to make mistakes, new coaches should be allowed to make mistakes too, especially when the team's kind of growing around him. Um, as far as like long term, the theme tonight was establishing the timeline. You look at all the moves that we made tonight, that's the theme. It started off with the um, um, kind of acknowledgement of that 4 um, pick swaps and 6 second round draft picks from
Mhm.
Phoenix. That's literally all their draft capital. They have nothing through 2030.
Yeah,
Um,
it's wild to
it's
think
just
about.
wild. um,
Suns are all in. Yeah, yeah.
oh, they're all in, all the way in. And
Right.
so um, they established what the timeline was. And then you trade Chris Paul and you get Poole, going to be our tank commander. Like he's going to average, he may lead the league in scoring on a 20-win team, and it'll be fun to watch.
Sure.
um, and the other picks on that were a 2030 first round pick and 2027 second round pick.
Yeah.
What Winger, Dawkins, and Schlenk did today was identify that our timeline is around 27 to 2030. They picked a young guy with a lot of upside who's probably going to take a couple years to get himself established in this league. He may be hitting his peak around 27 to 2030. Like that's my theme. I feel like for all the moves made this evening.
If I could just echo your sentiments, I would absolutely agree, because they were even saying it about Coulibaly, Vukcevic, like they've said it about both of them. Incredibly high upside guys. Whenever you hear high upside, it is typically a not ready now. It's a nice way of saying not ready now.
Yeah. What did they say about Caboclo? 5 years away from being 5 years away,
right.
or something like that.
Yeah. But the idea is that, like, you know, these are high potential individuals, and to your point, you look at the number of picks acquired years down the line. It's not next year, years down the line. And then you talk about this new CBA. This is maybe where we get into this a little bit, and how now the luxury tax has they're called aprons to them, or two layers, if you will. And the number you see is 7 million over the salary cap, and then 17.5 million over salary cap, each with new layers of restrictions. And I think the plan here is to continue to take on bad contracts and get more draft capital if we can. And for those that don't know, you need to still hit. So you can, unlike the NFL, where you can go really, really low on the cap and just get nowhere near the cap number. You need to hit at least 90% of the cap with your spending. So taking on a bad contract is actually not a bad thing here.
Yeah.
Because it helps you get to that 90%. So this Jordan Poole contract, for example, is helping us get to this 90%. And a change of scenery for him, who knows? That could be a separate topic.
Yeah.
But it allows us to get there, not go into the tax. And there are going to be other teams that are kind of screwed by their current contracts and are going to be in it almost immediately. And that's going to have ramifications on what they can do in free agency, how it works when a player gets bought out midseason. Draft picks being moved to the bottom of the first round is a very intriguing part of the new CBA. If you're in the second apron for multiple years, there are a lot of interesting things that occur. So you could have pick 1 and it drops all the way to pick 30. Like, that is a scary prospect for some teams. So I think we're looking at that and setting up. Do you agree, Max?
100%. We have set ourselves up to be the dumpster to which everyone gives their bad contracts. And there's not a lot of teams that have that. And so their teams are going to use the Wizards to offload their contracts, and we're going to acquire picks. We're going to require them to give us picks to do so. So don't want to interrupt, but as we're speaking, the Wizards are trading into the 52nd pick.
Okay.
So
breaking news here. Yeah, go ahead.
the pick's about to be announced. We can get to that if we have time.
Of course.
But yeah,
keep going.
I think that CBA is going to play a massive be a massive player for, like, over the next couple of years, as teams use the Wizards and their cap space to form the teams that they want to form. And I think that was another factor with the Bradley Beal trade, is that the Suns needed to get in ahead of the CBA, because I do think that there is some grandfathering of older contracts for a little bit of time. And so they couldn't trade for him at the deadline. Like, we couldn't trade Beal at the deadline, because then it would have more of an impact on the new CBA and how that all works. And so that also played a role in, like, kind of eliminating a little bit of our leverage.
Yeah, no. And one question I had for you, because I was curious about it, just sort of a thought experiment. Is there a scenario where Jordan Poole is playing so well, just from a scoring perspective, that he's moved at the deadline it's a big contract still, but
Yes.
he is moved at the trade deadline to a contender, or at the end of the season, he gets shipped because he had such a productive year scoring.
Yeah. I think any of the next 3 seasons it could happen. And like I think if we have the luxury of if the deal's not right this season, we'll hold on to it. We don't need to trade him right now. And he's also only 23. And
Right.
thrust into a very difficult situation with expectations to replace an injured Klay Thompson. Like that's hard. That's borderline impossible. Klay
Sure.
Thompson's an absurd scorer. Like there's no other player like him in the NBA.
Yeah.
And putting a young player like Jordan Poole in that role is a lot of pressure. He could figure it out in DC, and then he's
That's the
like
thing.
the wily
It's
vet that
intriguing.
leads our young guys in 2027, 2028
Yeah.
to the playoffs and into
It,
like a serious contention, which could be amazing.
and getting Tyus Jones, who's a leader in assist to turnover ratio, to be
Mhm.
alongside him, it's interesting.
It's a
It
little
is an
Jekyll and Hyde.
intriguing background. What'd you say?
Yeah. It's a little Jekyll and Hyde kind of situation.
A little bit.
Lightning and thunder and lightning, just like
Yeah.
the odd couple that you don't think would work well together, but I think they will.
Yeah. Let's see. Wow. Okay. So it seems like,
We
wait,
went and
Phoenix
got,
is selecting Tamani Kamara pick 52. Is that
yeah,
our pick, is what you're saying?
I believe so. Yes.
Oh, right. Phoenix is selecting, which is
Yeah.
us. Okay. Um, my guy, Trace Jackson Davis, is still on the board.
Still on the
And
board, 57.
he just tweeted out 20 minutes ago, y'all gonna regret this,
Oh, a pickup then. Yes.
which means he's a winner.
I wouldn't mind him. I wouldn't mind Wong from Miami. Dude got
Oh,
buckets in
Isaiah
the
Wong,
ACC. Isaiah Wong
that
got buckets.
was that your other guy that won't suck in the NBA?
Nah,
Okay,
nah.
well, why don't we
But he's a
transition?
potential undrafted guy. But yeah, let's go
Let's
transition.
transition to that. So Max is now locally famous for this list that he comes out
Very
with
locally.
annually. It was quite local to roughly 10 of us, if that. But it's a great list
Mhm.
where he gives 3 players that definitely will not suck in the NBA.
Yeah.
And I had the chance to review the list. Max has sent it to me. But Max, I want you to run through it. It's a pretty damn good list. There are a couple of misses, yes, but like that's always going to happen. GMs miss all the damn time.
Exactly.
Max, your hit rate's pretty ridiculous. Why don't you go ahead and tell us about it?
Yeah. So a little bit of background on the definitely will not suck list. It was inspired by
Ernie Grunfeld
Chris
and all
Vernon.
the picks you saw. No, go ahead.
God, I wish. It was inspired by Chris Vernon from the Ringer podcast, and because he always argues with Kevin O'Connor about upside, and like, well, then just find guys who won't be shitty in the NBA, and then you'll be good. And so I was like, wait, do teams actually think that way? And I was like, okay, who do I think is like definitely not going to be bad in the NBA? And it started in 2019, and my first 2 picks were Jarrett Culver and Sekou Doumbouya, who both were huge fucking misses. And so, but then the third one was Brandon Clark.
Good pick.
Went on a little bit of a streak there. 2020, I only won with 2 that year. It was Therese Halliburton and Sadiq Bey.
Okay, take
both
those.
Really good in the NBA. 2021, I was so hyped with one player that I didn't even pick anyone else because I was like, no, there's no way this guy's going to be bad. And at the time that I picked him, he was getting mocked in like the late teens, and I thought, oh shoot, the Wizards could actually get this guy. And then immediately, like people realize, like, oh, this Scotty Barnes, he's amazing. Yeah. Well, I actually watched him play basketball, and it's like super impressive. And so
2021 Scotty Barnes,
with him,
incredible.
And I think I'm on the right path. 22, we got Dyson Daniels, who's a maybe. We'll see. Jury's still out. But then Tari Eason and Jalen Duren, and I'm very confident in those 2 already that they're going to have really productive long NBA careers.
So who's on your list this year as we wrap this up?
Got 4 on my list this year.
4.
I'll go in the order of which they were drafted. First one is Derek Lively II from Duke. Okay. Grady Dick from.
And the suit didn't change anything for you.
I almost took him off because he did. It was a little embarrassing. From Kansas, Leonard Miller from G League Ignite, and then Max Lewis from Pepperdine.
Okay.
And two players for two different reasons. Derek Lively and Brady Dick are extremely good at NBA necessary skills. Brady Dick's one of the greatest shooters I've seen, and Derek Lively is Clint Capella. Like he's going to be a rim runner and shot blocker, and that's an incredibly necessary skill in the NBA.
Gotcha. Okay. And the other two,
and then Max Lewis and Leonard Miller, they're going to require a little bit more work, but they can score. And Leonard Miller particularly stood out to me when similar thing with Coulibaly being kind of second to like the second gun. Leonard Miller was that for Scoot on G League Ignite, and when Scoot was out, he played extremely well. Okay. And I think he's going to be able to kind of step up and figure out that role in his niche in the NBA. Max Lewis can get buckets, and he's fun to watch.
I was seeing his highlight reel. Man, oh man. This guy's pretty fluid for being the size that he is. And there you have it. That's your definitely will not suck at the NBA list for Max. Who
we'll have to check back next season, but
listen, I don't know how the algorithm works in his brain, but it's working. Okay. Again, like
I don't know how it works either.
You fine-tuned it early on and then said, you know what? Got these two wrong. Brandon Clark, we're going to study that one. And has just been churning out winners ever since. Tyrese Halliburton, for example. Man, oh man. And we had the chance. And we had the chance on him. So
Turbo, Denny, woo.
Yeah. Big year for Denny as well. Any last thoughts, Max, before we wrap this up?
I'm so excited the Wizards have a direction. I don't care if it's going to be sucking in the immediate future. We have a direction which we haven't had since we whiffed on Kevin Durant and got Andrew Nicholson, Jason Smith, and Jan Mahinmi as our consolation prize.
I mean, just think about that statement for a moment and just how long we've been waiting, right? How long we've been waiting for a moment where this is not guaranteed success, just to be clear. You still have to hit on the picks. You still need to be able to develop players. You still need to be able to have a good coaching staff. Like, it's not a guarantee, but for the first time, we have a shot at being good. We have been through this mediocre cycle for what feels like decades. That's not entirely true. We had Wall and Beal. We had Arenas, Jamison, Butler. There were some moments of promise.
Since Wall's injury, though.
Since Wall's injury, it has been, what's it been? You know? Exactly. Or even worse, I would love this. You know, right. Like at some point you get that pick that maybe takes you back, but it's just not
hovering.
We've been hovering, treading water, and it's nice to see us taking a deep dive and go, let's see what we can do.
Exactly.
But yeah, no, Max, thanks so much for being on. This was District Divided, DC Sports Podcast, more specifically tonight, a Washington Wizards podcast. Thank you guys so much for listening. If you enjoyed today's episode, please like it, please share it with your friends, family, and of course, subscribe to the channel. And if you want to hear more from Max, regardless of whether you want to hear more from Max or not, please show him some love in the comment section. We would really appreciate that. He would really appreciate that because he knows his stuff. He knows his stuff when it comes to the NBA. Max, thanks again.
Thanks so much, man. This is a blast.
All right, cool. Take it easy, everybody.
In DC, we're just hoping that you listen.